Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar all about the timesheets module in Sage HR. My name's Duncan, I'll be hosting and presenting the session today, and I am joined by my colleagues Jess, Ollie, Paul and Sarah, who are all standing by in the background ready and waiting to answer your questions. Let's now take a look at what we'll cover in today's session. So we'll start with an introduction to the timesheets module, running through some of the key features and what you'll need to do to get this activated. We're then going to take a closer look, starting with the timesheet settings. So we're going to explore general settings affecting the look and feel of your employees' timesheets, as well as some updated overtime settings that will be available to you guys very shortly, and the concept of managing timesheet groups with employees and managers. We'll then take a look at how the workflow works. So we'll look at processing timesheets from an employee's point of view. So starting with basic timesheets where employees enter their own start and end times, and how they can then submit those timesheets for approval to a timesheet group manager. We're then going to explore in greater detail the clocking in and out feature, which enables employees to record the time they've worked by clocking in and out either on the web portal or more commonly from the mobile app. And we'll give you a closer look at the geofencing feature, which allows you to check the location an employee is at the point they log in or clock out. We're going to finish off with a little look at some of the timesheet reports and other timesheet integration that's available, including integrating with irregular hours leave policies and with Sage Payroll if you use that online as well. So plenty to pack in there. We'll get underway with our introduction to the timesheets module. So timesheets is one of the modules available to subscribe to in Sage HR. And its primary use would be to record the employee's hours that they've worked over your defined timesheet period. So that could be weekly, fortnightly, or perhaps monthly. So all of these timesheet records could then be used maybe by your payroll team to help record the employees' hours worked and any overtime. And there are also some project features which allows you to record time spent on tasks and projects. But just to let you know, in today's webinar, we will be focusing on the tracking the hours worked rather than the project side of things. So ultimately, the aim is to help you cut down on admin, allowing your employees to self-serve their timesheets, reducing errors and saving you time. Now, in order to use the timesheets module, you must already have set up your core HR and leave management modules. And we do have some recordings of previous webinars that we've ran on those topics. And you'll need timesheets included in your Sage HR subscription. So if you don't already have this, you can add this to your subscription, or you may well have a package with us that includes timesheet in an existing bundle. Now, before we start looking at this in Sage HR, I'd like to run through some of the key features. So a big benefit of using timesheets in HR is that your employees are empowered to self-serve, meaning that they can then fill in the timesheets themselves to track the hours worked and submit that to an approver. So you can accurately track the hours worked, including calculating pay at normal time and any different overtime rates. And you can choose as well to use the clocking in functionality if you want an exact record of the time an employee starts and ends works or goes on to breaks. If they are clocking in and out, employees can use the Sage HR mobile app, which is available to download from the App Store. And all the clock-in information will automatically update start and end times and break times on their timesheets. And you can also integrate your leave policies. So if an employee is on approved time off, this can feed through to the timesheet itself, and it can automatically adjust any pre-filled hours based on the number of hours of approved leave, helping you with resource planning and scheduling. As you'll see towards the end of the session, you'll be able to manage, track and report on your timesheets with a suite of reports available to timesheet managers and HR admins. And there's a lot of customization that you can do. So we'll be exploring some of the settings in relation to general settings and overtime, allowing you to tailor this to suit your business and streamline your own workflows. And we have linked to some further information providing more detail on the timesheets module there on the slide. So in today's session, we're going to explore this in more detail, and we're going to begin by taking a closer look at the timesheet settings. So timesheet settings are split into three main areas. We have general settings, which control how the timesheets look and feel to your employees. So we'll be looking at how you can create timesheet administrators, giving people access to the settings, define your timesheet periods, looking at pre-fill options and viewing and editing options. We have overtime settings, and we're going to be showing you the new overtime policies feature, which is coming very soon to Sage HR. That allows you to calculate overtime either on a daily or per period basis. You can assign overtime categories for different types of overtime, and also have an option to allow employees to allocate their overtime to a time off policy, also known as time off in lieu. And then later on in the webinar, we're going to explore time clocking, allowing you to switch on clocking in and out, and also explaining more about how geofencing and work zones work. So I'm going to give you a bit of a demo on some of these settings to start with. So let's take a look now. Now, to access any settings, you will need to be logged in either as an HR admin or be designated as a timesheets administrator. And if you do have this access, when you click on your username here at the top of the screen, you'll find there is an option to go to settings. And then once you're in the settings, for timesheets, you would head to this timesheets area. And then you'll see we've got the general settings, overtime, time clocking, and then timesheet groups. So let's start with a quick look at some of the general settings. And I'm going to point out some of the key information on this screen as well. So all HR admins will be able to access this screen, but if you want someone who's not a full administrator to be able to access the timesheet settings, they can be set up as a timesheets administrator by selecting their name here from this list. You can allow your employees to export timesheet reports by selecting a box just here. So that allows them to download a record of the timesheet that they filled in and submitted. And then just underneath, we've got some settings that control how timesheets interacts with your time off policies. So you would simply select which policies you want to automatically adjust timesheet information. And in this case, I've selected both holiday and sick day, meaning that if there is approved time off on a date on the timesheet, there'll be an indicator to show that. And if the timesheet has been pre-filled, the hours will be reduced or removed accordingly. Just underneath, you have your public holiday settings. So you can choose to have public holidays set to 0 hours by default if you know that your business will be closed on all public holidays and therefore no one would be working. And then we have the setting for your timesheet period. So this controls what dates will appear on a timesheet. And you can choose between weekly, bi-weekly, semi-monthly, or monthly. So we've gone with weekly timesheets. We've defined what day of the week our timesheet period starts. So we've chosen Monday in this example, and you'll see that there will be 52 timesheet periods in this year with the weekly option selected. Now, once you have set a timesheet period, we would suggest that you stick to that setting rather than chopping and changing, as if you do change the timesheet period, this can have effect on timesheets that have been previously approved. So looking a bit further down in these settings, you do have some pre-fill options. So this allows you to automatically populate an employee's timesheet, either based on their working pattern, or if you subscribe to the shift scheduling module, the shifts that they are scheduled to work. Now, you don't have to pre-fill. Perhaps you have employees whose hours vary all the time, so they don't have a set working pattern. You would prefer them to manually enter their start and end times, or even use the clocking in and out features. We've opted for today's demo to pre-fill from a working pattern, but we are going to allow our employees to edit those times if they need to. For example, if they've worked extra hours or if they've perhaps started a bit late. And then under the pre-filling options, you've got your viewing and editing options. So a few of these just to point out. These ones can switch on or off different columns on the timesheet, showing contracted hours, the difference between worked hours and contracted hours, and showing overtime above the timesheet as a total. And then we can choose how to display the time worked, either in decimals or hours and minutes. So we've got hours and minutes, so an hour and a half, for example, would show 1 hour 30 minutes. If it was set to decimals, that would display as 1.5 hours. So last few settings here at the bottom of the screen. One of the key ones that I want to point out is allowing employees to edit their workday. Now, you would need to have this selected if you want your employees to be able to amend or enter their start and end times and break times on the timesheet. If perhaps you're using clocking in and out and you just want to go off the clock in and out times without giving your employees the option of editing that, you can deselect this box. And then finally, we've got the ability to show alerts on the timesheet if there's any difference from an employee's working pattern. So we've opted to show an alert if the hours on the timesheet are more than in their working pattern. So you can explore these settings in more detail. Wherever you see a little question mark, it'll take you to kind of further help if you just hover over that. And of course, we do have our online help that can help you get up and running with this as well. Now, just to show you how some of these settings will affect what the timesheets look like, I've got an example of a timesheets with most of the features enabled here on the slide just here. And just to point out some of the settings I've mentioned, so the timesheet period determines the date range that will be available to fill in on each timesheet. So mine's set to weekly, so it's showing the Monday to Sunday dates at the top of the screen there. We've switched on contracted hours and difference columns. So these can be hidden by deselecting the boxes if you prefer to do that. And we've also got overtime showing, as you can see at the top of the screen. We're setting ours in hours and minutes, so we can see the totals are showing in hours and minutes rather than in decimals. And we are allowing our employees to edit the workday. So they will be able to go in and override either the pre-filled times or the clocked times if required. And we've got the box tick to show the start and end times in the main timesheet view. So it's up to you whether you want to show that or whether you want your employees to go into each date individually to record the times that they've worked. And finally, we'll see this a little bit later on. If you've enabled clocking in and out on the time clock, the clock in times will be displayed as well before you start, finish and break times, which will be kind of automatically calculated from the clocking in and out. So we've covered some general settings there. What I also want to show you next is the overtime settings. Now, just to let you know, the overtime policies feature that I'll be showing you today isn't live in the product just yet. Our team is putting the final touches on it, and it will be available very soon. As soon as it's released, we'll be in touch with all timesheets users so that you'll know exactly when you can start using the enhanced functionality. So we're really excited to release these changes to you, which will introduce a new concept of overtime policies within Sage HR. Now, when it comes to tracking overtime, overtime is defined as any hours worked above an employee's designated working pattern. But the overtime can either be tracked based on the hours in specific days, so that would be a daily tracking method, or the total number of hours over the timesheet period. Now, if you are using daily tracking, you can also create overtime categories which allows you to report on different types of overtime depending on what days of the week that was worked and how many hours of overtime were worked on those days. And there's a third option within your settings, which allows employees to add overtime to a time off policy. So this is sometimes known as time off in lieu. So instead of it being recorded as paid overtime, it can be added to a time off policy, which your employees can then take the time back. So these settings have always existed, but it is now possible to assign these settings to individual overtime policies. So it gives you more flexibility so that you can start tracking overtime, setting up your overtime for different groups of employees in different ways. So let's take a look at that in the demo now. So I'm going to select the overtime option, and I'm in a preview of the version with overtime policies. So this will be coming, as I say, very soon to all of our timesheet users. And you can see within the overtime section, we have an overtime policies tab. And we also have a tab to define overtime categories. So I've already got some categories set up. As I say, these are used when tracking overtime daily. And you can see some examples here where an employee has worked extra hours on a working day, up to 2 hours. That will be classified as rate 1 in my example. Anything above 2 hours to 10 hours of overtime on a working day is going to be classified as rate 2. And we've got a category for weekend rates as well. And if you have different rules for different groups of employees, these new overtime policies will allow you to assign different overtime categories to different policies. So we will provide a default daily tracking policy that you'll be able to customize if you wish to use. So you'll be able to add overtime categories if you want to, and to set up time off in lieu. And if you're an existing Timesheets user, your existing overtime settings will be used to create additional overtime policies with the relevant employees already assigned. So you can see I've got one where we're tracking overtime per period, and I've got one employee group assigned to that. And I've got another one where I've got overtime tracking daily, and this one does have the categories and the time off in lieu. So I just want to show you the settings of this standard overtime policy that I created. So we've given it a policy name, so that's up to you what you call it. Overtime tracking can be daily, per period, or hidden from the timesheets. And then just underneath, I have opted to allow employees to move overtime to a time off policy. They're going to be able to choose whether they want to do that, so it can be split between paid and time off. And I've selected the time off policy that that will be moved to. If I just click Save and Continue, you'll see for this one, I have assigned overtime categories. So I've assigned all of my categories, but we can choose which ones we want to. And as you'll see a bit later on, when overtime is worked, depending on whether it's a working day and how many hours of overtime it is, it will be categorized according to these rules. So as I say, this is going to give you more flexibility once released to use mix and match your settings for different groups of employees. And you can manage all of your timesheet groups from this option here in the settings. So now that we've taken a look at some of the general and overtime settings, next thing I want to cover at this stage are the timesheet groups. We're going to be coming back to clocking in and out later on in the session. So the purpose of a timesheet group is to allow employees and managers to have access to the timesheets module. You can create as many groups as you need. So it could be used for employees in different locations, different areas of the business, or employees that need to follow different rules for overtime. And once added to a timesheet group, that will then allow those employees to access the timesheet features within their software. So when they log into the HR portal as an employee, they would see timesheets if they are a member of a timesheet group. So employees would fill in the timesheets. The timesheet group manager would be responsible for checking the timesheets that have been submitted and approving or declining those timesheets once they've been sent through. So you'll see notifications appear on the dashboard. They'll get email notifications as well when timesheets have been submitted, and you will be able to assign one or more manager to each timesheet group to take that role, or full HR admins will also be able to approve timesheets. So let's take a quick look at that now. So going down to my timesheet groups, I've just set up 2 at the moment, and in total I've got 4 of my employees assigned to groups. So 4 employees will have access to fill in timesheets. We've got manager designated to each of these groups, and we've also been able to attach the overtime policy for that group. So I've got group 1 using our standard overtime policy. I've got group 2 using a per period policy. So from here, you can change who's assigned to a group by clicking on the eligibility option, like so. So I've got some names ticked here for the employees within the group and also the manager. And you'll also be able to edit the group settings, edit the overtime policy, or delete a group. So really simple to set up. You'd click on the Add Timesheet Group option, just here. You'd fill in a timesheet group name, choose the required settings. So in here, you can opt to send a monthly reminder for employees to submit their timesheets, and also to allow employees to clock in from a mobile device. Or if you do have a third-party clock-in system that you want to use that connects via API, you can choose to enable API clock-in instead. But if you've got this ticked, that will remove all of the inbuilt clocking in and out features. That's only used for kind of third-party integration. So this is a section where you choose your employees and managers. And then once this has gone live, you'll also be able to assign an overtime policy to the group. So that is how you set up your employees and your approvers so that they then have access to this functionality. So we've been focusing there on some of the setup, but what I want to move on to next is to show you how the timesheets feature actually works in action. So we're going to try and explore the full workflow from the employee recording their timesheet information to the approver then approving that information so that that's then available to the reports and other integrations that we're going to cover a little bit later on. So when it comes to processing timesheets, again, you do have some options. So depending on your timesheet settings, the employee's timesheet will either appear blank with no start or end times or break times ready for your employees to record the times that they've worked for that day. They might be pre-filled based on their working pattern or their shift schedule. And if you have allowed employees to edit their own workday, they would then be able to adjust a pre-filled timesheet to show any differences, maybe extra hours they've worked or reduced hours on particular days. The employee would choose the timesheet period that they're working in. So that will be selected from a drop-down list. And there is also an option to have a timesheet filled in by clocking in and out. But for now, we're going to focus on completing the timesheets manually by the employee kind of entering their hours. So when they come to fill in their timesheets, it will keep track of the total hours worked, as well as any overtime above their working pattern. And once all of the hours are entered for that particular timesheet period, it is then a case of the employee submitting the timesheet. And at the point they submit it, if they have worked overtime and you've given them the option in the overtime policy to move overtime to a time off policy, they will then be able to choose whether they want that overtime paid or whether they want it to go to the time off in lieu policy. So I'm going to show you that process from an employee's point of view. So let's just switch over to that now. So I'm logged into Sage HR, obviously from a web browser for my employee Ava, who's been added to a timesheet group. She can access the timesheet by selecting timesheets here on the left-hand side, but would also have access to record and edit the timesheet from the mobile app. As you can see, we've got the drop down for the period. So we're actually going to go into last week's because we want to submit last week's timesheet. So I've selected that from the drop down, and this one has been pre-filled. So it is showing start and end times and the length of the break based on this employee's working pattern. Now, because they've worked some extra hours this week, Ava needs to edit her timesheet. So that can be done in a couple of different ways. If you've got start and finish times displayed, they can be selected like so. And then the start or end time or length of break can be amended. And then to save any of the changes to that particular day, I would just go ahead and click this green tick. As you can see, that has been recorded as overtime because we have a daily policy in place, and they've worked 2 extra hours compared to their contracted hours for that day. Another way of making changes, rather than clicking into these columns, is to click on the date itself. So Ava's done some extra work on the weekend. And then from here, we can enter the hours of work. So started at 9 and worked until 2 with no break on that day. And there's also the ability to add comments. So I'm going to put weekend event cover. And I can go ahead and save that like so. So because there's a comment, we'll get an indicator, and the approver will also be able to view those comments as well. So we're allowing our employees to export their information if they want to. So they do have that export option at the bottom. And once we're happy with the information on this timesheet, Ava would go ahead and submit this. And because we do have some overtime on this timesheet, and in our overtime settings, we're allowing our employee to transfer it to a time off policy if they wish to. They have then got the option of splitting their overtime between being paid out and given to time off in lieu. So in this case, we're going to give 2 hours at rate 1 to time off in lieu, but she would like her weekend rate paid out. So this is the employee's preference. They would click on to submit. That is now submitted, and it means that the timesheet approver or the group manager would get an alert asking them to approve it. Now, before the timesheet's been approved, if we realise that we need to make a change, there is an option to withdraw the timesheet. You can then make the change and submit it again. If the timesheet has already been approved, you would need to get a timesheet manager to decline it if any changes are required, and then they can either make the changes themselves or they can ask the employee to make the amendment and submit the timesheet again. So we've now got this one submitted, and that's being sent over to our approver to approve those hours. So that's the next step of the workflow, approving timesheets. So a timesheet group manager, an admin or a timesheet admin will be able to approve or decline the employee's timesheets. Depending on settings, they may also have the ability to edit a timesheet that's been submitted by an employee if required. So you've got the choice of whether you send it back to the employee or you decline it and edit yourself before it's then submitted and approved again. Just to be aware though, in order to edit a submitted timesheet, it will need to be declined first. So the employee can do that by withdrawing the timesheet if it hasn't yet been approved. The time off approver can decline it, and then it would be possible to make changes. And just to help the approvers out, they'll be able to check at a glance the timesheet status for each employee within their group. So if there's a little green dot, that indicates that the timesheet has been submitted and approved. If they're seeing a yellow dot, it means the timesheet has been submitted but not yet approved. If there is no dot, it means that that employee has not submitted a timesheet for that period. So let's just jump back to the demo now and show you approving the timesheets. So we're actually going to switch to the role of a timesheet manager. So Oliver is our timesheet manager for this timesheet group. And when Oliver logs in on the web portal, he'll see on the dashboard that there is a task asking us to approve the timesheet for one of our employees. It's also indicating that there is a difference between the contracted hours and what they've worked. And we can click on this little icon in order to go in and view the timesheet. And what we can see here for period 7 is that we've already approved Oscar's timesheet. Ava's has been submitted and needs to be approved. Leo hasn't yet got round to submitting the timesheet. But we can see the same information pretty much that Ava was seeing. We know there's a comment here on the Saturday. So as the approver, we can click into this. We can see what the overtime was for. So it would be a case of checking that we're happy with the timesheet. And if so, we can go ahead and approve it. Now, if the approver notices something that needs to be amended, what they will need to do is to decline the timesheet. That can then send a notification to the employee asking them to resubmit it, and you can put your own comment in as to why it has been declined. But we're actually happy with this, so we're going to go ahead and approve it. We can also see that they've asked to split their overtime between time off in lieu and being paid out. So if required, we could amend this information as the approver, but we're just happy to approve it as it is. So when I click on to approve, you can see that icon has gone green. So we now have 2 out of our 3 timesheets ready and submitted. So yeah, that is approving the timesheet, which kind of completes the workflow there. And you'll see what happens with approved information a little bit later on in the webinar. Now, what I've been showing you in the demos is all on the web portal. But just to let you know, employees are also able to use the mobile app in order to view, enter, edit, and submit their timesheets. So there's a little animation on the slide there giving you a flavour of how that works. And useful to know that if you are using the clocking in and out features, employees would generally use the mobile app to clock in and out. And if you do want to use any of the geofencing features, which can check whether an employee is in a designated work zone, they would need to use the mobile app and enable location services. But we'll cover that in a bit more detail a little bit later on. But everything that you saw me do on Ava's online portal can also be done on the mobile app. That can be submitted through to the approver, but the approver themselves would need to use the web portal in order to approve the timesheets. So now that you've seen a little bit about the mobile app, we're going to sort of circle back to clocking in and out. So this was the area of the settings that we didn't take a look at earlier, but you can enable the time clock so that your employees clock in and out. And this allows you to record the exact time that employees are starting work, stopping for breaks, and ending work. And if you're using the time clocking, the times that they've clocked in and out will be used to populate the timesheet for that particular date. Now, it is possible to clock in online through a browser or on the HR mobile app, but you will not be able to clock in on a browser if you're using the geofencing feature and you've set up what we call a restricted work zone. Other thing to keep in mind is that once you've enabled clocking in, the clocking in functionality will be available for all employees in all timesheet groups. So it's either switched on or switched off, and we'll take a look at some of those settings shortly. The other part of clocking in and out on the mobile app is that you can use the geofencing feature in order to create geofenced work zones. So this enables you at the point of clocking in and out to request the location of your employee and to record whether it was inside a designated work zone or outside of that zone. So this allows the timesheet manager to either view if an employee has clocked in or out outside of the work zone, or there is a setting to restrict clocking in and out so that an employee must be physically present within that work zone in order to clock in and out of their timesheets. So the location itself is only checked at the point of a clock in or a clock out, and the only information that's recorded in regards to that location is whether it is inside or outside of a designated work zone. So I'm going to show you how to set that up, and we'll take a look at some timesheets where we've been using geofencing as well. So I'm returning back to my admin profile. So remember, as an admin, we have access to the settings from our menu here at the top. Once you're in the settings, I'm going to go to timesheets, and this time I'm going to go to time clocking. So far we've not had it enabled, but I'm going to tick the box to enable the time clock and click on to save. And then you can see that then unlocks the rest of the time clock-in settings. So first of all, you can round the clock-in time to the nearest minute, 5, 10, or 15 minutes from this setting just here. There's a setting around grace periods if you use clock-in notifications, and you've got your auto clock out setting. So for an employee that forgets to clock out, you could have them automatically clocked out after a selected number of hours. So in this example, I have got that set to 12 hours. Now, just underneath, you can set up alerts on the timesheets for employees who have manually edited their clocked hours. Now, you've got a couple of choices here. You could go into your settings and you could clear the box, allowing employees to edit their workday. And that way, it won't be possible for them to make any changes to their clock-in times. But if you are allowing them to edit their workday, by having this switched on, you're going to see a warning icon if they have made any changes to the clock-in times. The other setting that we mentioned is geofencing. So this is based around the concept of a work zone. That's a position on a map which will have a defined radius, and it can use location services on the employee's mobile device to check whether they are in or out of that zone. So I've already got one set up and assigned to one of my employees. And just to show you some of the settings that I've used, we've entered a work zone name. I've called this Sage Newcastle. We defined the location. So probably easiest if you start with a postcode, and then you can drop the pin exactly where you want the center of your work zone to be. And then you select the radius size. So it's useful to have a little bit of leeway when it comes to the radius, just to account for things like signal strength, GPS accuracy, and kind of triangulation issues. So we've got a 200-meter radius centered around this point on the map. You'd also set your work zone rule. So this is what we call an unrestricted work zone. So we're going to allow employees to clock in from anywhere, but we're going to show managers whether the employee has clocked in inside or outside of a work zone that's assigned to them. So that's the one I've already set up. You can create up to 25 of these. So you can click on to create a new work zone. You'd pop your location in. That's then going to find it on the map. And then you can kind of move it to where you need to, reposition the pin and set your radius. So these are your two work zone rules. If you're only allowing clocking in within a work zone, that's when it's restricted. So they will have to be physically present within that radius in order to clock in. So I'm just going to save these clocking in features, and that is then going to allow us to get our employees to clock in and out. So if you want to read more on geofencing, just to let you know, we have added a link there to the handout. So now this is switched on, your employees will be able to clock in and out, either from their dashboard, if they're signing in from a browser, or more commonly from the mobile app. So there's a little widget on the app that they would swipe to clock in, and they would swipe left to clock out. Just be aware though that if you have enabled geofencing for an employee and they are in a restricted work zone, it means that they will not have the time clock widget on their dashboard. They will have to use the mobile app in order to clock in or out. So let's take a look first at clocking in from a browser. So I'm just going to bring another employee profile onto screen. So this is Leo's profile. Leo is one of our employees. He is assigned to a work zone, but it's an unrestricted work zone. So we are allowing him to clock in and out from anywhere. And we can see here on the dashboard, they are already clocked in, and they do have an option of clocking out from here if we want them to do that. Just looking at the timesheets. So because we've got the time clock enabled, we are now seeing clocked times on the timesheet. So for example, yesterday, these were the hours that the employee worked. So that has populated their start and finish time and their break. They've actually worked a couple of minutes, 8 minutes of overtime on that day, according to the times that they've clocked in. And we can see this morning, they have clocked in at 8:45. So going back to the previous week, start to get a flavour of how it builds up based on the clocking in and out times. These start and finish times have been rounded to the nearest minute according to my settings, as have the break times, total hours, contracted hours and difference, and it would be submitted in the same way as a manual timesheet. But the difference is that these start and end times are coming from the time clock rather than being entered by the employee. Now, if the employee is allowed to amend their clocking in times within your settings, maybe they're putting a little comment in there, you'll see that it does generate a warning saying that the employee manually edited their clock time. And if we just take a look at that from the timesheet manager point of view, if I now look at the timesheet for Leo, we can see that same information. What they can also view is the location when they're clocking in and out. So you can see last Monday, Leo has clocked in the work zone, clocked out for lunch in the work zone, clocked back in, but then when they finished work at the end of the day, they have actually been located outside of the work zone. So it gives you that sort of visibility of where they were. And I think with this being an edited timesheet, it is kind of removing that information. So Wednesday was a work from home day for Leo. So you can see all of the clocking ins and out has been done outside of the work zone. So yeah, that's how it works. What I'm also going to show you is a video of how it works with the mobile app. So I'm going to play that for you, and then we'll be back to take a quick look at reports and integration. So I'll just play the video now.
We're helping businesses perfect their people processes with smart tools from Sage HR. Say hello to more accurate time tracking with geofencing, available now in Sage HR. Now GPS enabled, our mobile clock-in lets employees clock in and out from the app when they're on site. Gain insights into when and where your employees clock in and out, minimizing discrepancies and ensuring accurate payroll processing, thanks to customizable work zones chosen by you to suit your business's needs. With geofencing, you can ensure your employees are adhering to scheduled work hours and break times within designated boundaries, which auto-populates accurate timesheets that you can rely on, helping you understand working patterns and locations to make informed scheduling decisions. With the safety and assurance that people are in the right place at the right time. Turn precision time tracking into seamless rota planning with our integrated timesheet and leave management modules, now including geofencing, so you can maximize efficiency and focus on helping your business thrive. Get started with Sage HR today.
So yeah, that's just a quick video there showing you some of the features of clocking in and out on the mobile device and using geofenced work zones. But of course, we have more information available in our help center. So just to finish up, we're going to take a look at some of the things that you would be doing once your timesheets have been submitted and approved. So we'll take a look at some of the common reports and mention a couple of integrations between the timesheets module and time off and payroll. So starting with the reports, we have some recommended reports for timesheet users. These will be available to timesheet group managers, timesheet admins and HR admins. So you can get a status report. You can view the full employee timesheets for a period. There's an hourly calculator giving you an easy way to total hours over a date range, and also an overtime report. And with many of the reports, you'll be able to export to Excel to do your own further analysis on that information. So let's take a quick look at where you would find the reports. So I'm going to do this as an admin user. So if I go to my reports option, here on the left-hand side, see I have an area for timesheet reports. Timesheet status is a good way of getting an overall view of which timesheets have been submitted or approved over a date range. So if I just look back at the last 6 weeks or so and generate the report, we can see got a lot of green on this report. We have got some employees with unsubmitted timesheets. So that allows us to identify these employees and perhaps chase them up where required. And we can see Ava's been working some kind of additional hours with some alerts showing on some of these timesheets. To report on an individual timesheet period, we'll have a look at week 7. You can run the report like so. So this is showing us the number of hours worked for each day, got the totals, differences, and where overtime is in play. We can see whether overtime has been given to an overtime policy or approved to be paid out. So again, export options are available for the timesheet reports. And this is where you'll also find things like the hourly calculator and the overtime report as well. So do check that out. That's for HR admins, and also most of them are available for timesheet group managers as well. Other places where timesheets will integrate with other areas of HR includes with time off policies. So it is possible to create time off policies for irregular hour workers, which is based on the legislation where the leave is accrued as a percentage of the hours worked. This can work in two different ways in HR. You can either get an administrator to enter the number of hours worked manually for each employee over a particular date range, which obviously is quite a time-intensive exercise, a lot of manual work done when you do it that way. Or if you're a timesheets user, it can be based on the employee's approved timesheet hours, and that will automatically feed into the time off policy for that particular employee, increasing the balance of their time off according to the number of hours worked. So you'll see there's a screenshot there on the slide of how that happens. The system will do the adjustments to the time off allowance for these irregular hour workers. Won't be able to show you that in the demo today, but I have linked to our help center, which will tell you more. And finally, if you use Sage Payroll online, that's our Sage Business Cloud Payroll, you can benefit from payroll timesheet integration, which allows you to map different overtime rates to different payments in your payroll, and then based on approved timesheets, it will then automatically pull through the number of hours that are due to be paid. So it's not currently available for Sage 50 Payroll, our desktop product. That is planned for the future, but we don't have any firm dates on that so far. But for more steps on setting up timesheet integration between Sage Payroll and HR, do check out the information linked to on the handout. So it even lets you view a mini view of the timesheet within the payroll UI. So that has pretty much brought us to the end of what we're going to show you in today's webinar. We are going to stick around for the last 5 minutes just to make sure we've answered as many questions as possible in the Q&A. But I also want to mention some of the further support that's available to you guys, starting with another webinar that you might be interested in from our Sage HR Advice Service. So we've got a session on Wednesday, the 4th of March on the Employment Rights Bill explained, so what's new and what to do. We're joined by HR experts who are giving you the lowdown on this. You can register for that, completely free to attend. You'll find all of the details at sage.co.uk/webinars. So quite a timely one. There are some big changes coming from April. You can access our e-learning courses at Sage University. So simply head to sageu.com and then find your way to the Sage HR training. So I've got a section all about getting started. You can explore all of the different modules in more depth, including the timesheets module. We have some additional topics and also training geared to employees. So do check that out at sageu.com. So like I say, we're going to stick around in the background to answer your questions. For those of you that perhaps are leaving now, thank you so much for joining us at the webinar. I hope the demo today has given you some insight as to how timesheets could work for you. And if you are interested in adding that to your subscription, do head along to our help center for details of how to add that. So I'm going to go on to mute for a few moments just to help out with the Q&A. And I'll be back to say goodbye when we're ready to wrap this up. So I will speak to you shortly. Hello again, everyone. Thank you so much for sending all of those questions through. You've certainly kept our team busy today, and I hope we've been able to provide some good answers for you there. We will unfortunately have to close the session down within the next minute or so. So I just thought I'd take this opportunity to thank you once more for joining us at the webinar today. When you exit, we will invite you to take our webinar survey. So it'd be great to know what you thought of today's session. So please do spend a moment to complete that if you wouldn't mind. And we will send you a follow-up email, which will include a link to the recording of today's session. So that will allow you to catch up or rewatch any bits that you may have missed. On behalf of myself and the team behind the scenes, thanks again for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your week. And we look forward to perhaps seeing you on another webinar in the future. But it is goodbye for now.